I wanted to know whether a stock cooler will handle the power draw with Precision Boost Overdrive PBO enabled and increased GPU voltage. I also wanted to confirm that it will keep the GPU at full power and instead dial back the CPU power allocation when you hit a power or thermal limitation. Realistically, it won't matter whether the CPU runs at 4.4 or 4 GHz, as long as the Vega cores keep going full tilt. Enabling Precision Boost Overdrive PBO unlocks power on a Ryzen chip, which means it can draw as much energy as the motherboard and the cooler can handle. Increasing any voltage will then use that increased power budget to enable higher clocks. Generally, higher clocks are more stable at higher voltages, but an increased voltage means the chip will use more watts, and therefore it will be more difficult to cool it down. If you want to overclock the Ryzen 5600G's integrated Vega GPU, we want that extra voltage juice to keep it stable. Usually I use my AIO, but of course that had to go for this test. I mounted the stock cooler on my B550 ITX board. I took off its shroud because I wasn't sure it would clear the RAM, but if there's enough space on your board, I suggest you leave it on. But now, let's see how well it does. I start with an extremely high load. I run the Heaven benchmark and Cinebench at the same time. But I limited Cinebench to 6 cores at full load, which is more than any game will realistically use for an extended period while running on the integrated Vega GPU. I set my fan speed to 100% for temperatures above 70 C. My ambient temperature here is fairly low. It's winter in Switzerland. The CPU package idle temperature was 31 C. As you can see, the 6-core load and running the GPU test at the same time put around a 93 watt burden on the little stock cooler. It will sustain this for a bit, but eventually the temperatures crept up to 90 C and I stopped the test. But 93 watts is not typical for a gaming scenario. That's way over the top. If you've seen my video where I ran higher clocks and faster RAM, I will link that here. You may have noticed that it typically draws less than 75 watts. So, I dialed the number of Cinebench cores back to 4, but the GPU load was still 100%. That resulted in an 85 watt package draw, which is still more than we'll see in games. But this was sustainable on the stock cooler, which set that 85C while keeping power on the Vega cores going, and only slightly reducing the boost on the CPU to around 4.3 GHz. Still, 85 watts is more than we need to handle. So I fired up Cyberpunk and waited in this fairly busy spot for around 1 hour. The package temperature after that hour was 74 C, while drawing around 70 watts. Perfectly reasonable. I had also set up a reasonably hefty Vega overclock here, 2350 MHz at 1.256 volts. I then fired up Tomb Raider 2013 to get a different CPU load scenario. Initially, here in windowed mode, I get 120 FPS and a 70 watt draw. You may wonder why this draws as much power as Cyberpunk 2077, and that's because the GPU can push a higher frame rate. When I changed the settings to ultimate quality and pushed MSAA, I got it to drop about 8 watts, because now the CPU doesn't have to keep up with as many frames. The stock cooler did well, in my opinion. It is sufficient and it can handle 75 watts package draw, no problem. And even if you are in a place with somewhat higher ambient temperature, you won't need to worry. I haven't done a lot of testing on this, but it looks like the Ryzen 5600G will start dropping boost spins on the CPU while PBO is on at around 75 C. For some reason, I expected the stock cooler to be noisier than it actually is. It's not bad at all. Even an inexpensive motherboard's VRM should be good for 75 watts, so no worries there either. While working on the overclocking and tuning video, I made this video, so we know whether the stock cooler can do it. It can. I'll see you guys.